It's Sunday, December 1st, 2019, and this is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. As always, just a couple moments here at the beginning, encouraging all of us to be better citizens, which means opening the lines of communication to listen to people with opposing views, and especially trying to at least listen to them enough and ask them enough about how have you come to this place where you are. Please tell me about that. And then if you would pay me the same respect, I'd like to tell you how I'm at that place. And then we get on the same sheet of music, the same piece of paper, the same playing field, whatever analogy you want to use. Because then this nation of, I don't know, roughly 340 million people-ish, we can walk forward together side by side as opposed to standing on opposite sides of the street and hurling rocks and stones at each other. And of course, again, I can't emphasize enough to you that a big reason why that is true, why we often stand on opposite sides of the street, is because we're, one, unwilling to listen to each other, and two, because there are groups of people, wealthy, powerful people, who intentionally antagonize that divide. Okay? They try to keep us divided so they can keep significant portions of the population easily controlled. Okay? So today I want to talk about hope. And I saw this article, and I didn't see it until after Thanksgiving, but I think it was written and published on Thanksgiving. But it's a fellow named Bill Rivers from NBC News. I have no idea who Bill Rivers is. To the best of my knowledge, never read an article about him before. But he's written an opinion piece. Anyway, I'll show you I'll talk to this. So it says, polarization and political divisions might run deep, but we've overcome much worse. And so the title of today's show is Hope. There is hope. There is hope that you and I can be reasonable enough to at least listen to how we, some divisive issue, gun control, abortion, gay and lesbian rights, or whatever divisive thing that's out there, we can step by step at least come to some understanding, some mutual understanding of the situation, and then talk about what is the right way to go forward. So his article says that major news organizations, and again, some of them are the news, they do focus on the who, the what, the where, and the when, but many of these so-called news organizations really aren't focused on that at all, and it's all about opinion and bias and trying to strike those chords of divisiveness, to keep us apart. But anyway, major news organizations have paid a lot of attention to America's fraying social fabric. Associated Press did a series called Divided America. CNN did one called Fractured States of America. In the Atlantic, the December issue was under the provocative headline, How to Stop a Civil War. So there's a lot of coverage of our disconnection. And even that coverage is according to certain professors, sociologists, that's maybe even making the thing worse. So here's the paragraph that I want to read. But though the familiar phrase, we never have been more divided, feels accurate, it is in fact not true or false. History teaches us that today's divisions, deep and painful and serious as they are not worse than those America has endured in the past. We have plenty of examples, other than even the worst case scenario of the Civil War. So let's see here. Let's talk about, so it says painful fissures. So what's the fellow's name again? Bill Rivers. So painful fissures in America's social fabric have dogged the country from its fragile. So here's an interesting thing. If I ever learned it, I have long since forgot it. Less than 5 years after the Constitution was signed, the Whiskey Rebellion, which I recognize that, rocked western Pennsylvania when 7,000 farmers took up arms around Pittsburgh and to protest the imposition of federal liquor taxes. In response, President George Washington organized a militia of nearly 13,000. And why did he have to organize a militia? Because back in the day, we didn't have a standing army. But anyway, he organized nearly 13,000 in a militia and personally led them to Pennsylvania to put down the rebellion. The only time a sitting president has ever led troops into the field. Now, if I had ever learned that, I have long since forgotten it. But don't you think that's interesting? So anyway, the Whiskey Rebellion. Let's see here. 50 years later, there was a bunch of increased European immigration. So immigration, okay, and especially from Ireland. So there's a big chunk of my family is Irish, okay, immigrants from Ireland. And Ireland, which was reeling from a potato famine, and it stoked fires of intense anti-Catholic xenophobia. So in the 1840s and 1850s, members of the nativist American Party, dubbed the Know Nothings, organized and inspired attacks on Roman Catholic churches, convents, and neighborhoods. In one 1844 riot in Philadelphia, protesters stole cannons and fired on a Catholic church and its defenders who were trapped inside. By 1855, the so-called Know Nothings had claimed 43 seats in Congress, and the party nominated former President Millard Fillmore for president in 1856, and he actually carried Maryland in the election, so he got the Electoral College votes from Maryland. Amazing. The Civil War's embers had barely cooled when another anti-immigrant sentiment once again reached fever pitch. This time it was a wave of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. In New Orleans, in 1891, a mob of somewhere between 8,000 and 20,000 vigilantes stormed a jail and shot 11 Italians who had been acquitted in the murder of a popular chief of police. The New York Times sided with the attackers, calling the unarmed victims sneaking and cowardly Sicilians, and no one was prosecuted for the killings. And New Orleans only just issued a formal apology in April of this year. Okay. And of course, I remember I was born in 1961, and so I remember the late 60s, and the race, all the race riots and things like that, and of course Martin Luther King. I was quite young, but I do remember some of these things occurring. So after the assassination of Martin Luther King, a national outpouring of heartbreak and rage led to riots in more than 100 cities, and the National Guard units poured into cities across the country. In Wilmington, Delaware, they ended up staying for 9 months. Wilmington, Delaware, making the city one of the longest occupied since the end of Reconstruction. And I'm not going to go on. He gives some others here, but you get the idea. We've had serious divides in our nation in the past, and I'm personally worried that some of the divides are going to be harder to heal this time because of the proliferation of the different information streams that they can continue to use to beat the drum of division. But I hope not. And one of the reasons why I do the show, of course, is to promote communication and fairness and an appreciation that our experiences are different, and therefore our perceptions of what should be done are different. It doesn't make us bad people on either side. It just makes us having the need, the desperate need, perhaps, to talk, really about the issues in a way that is accepting that none of us as individuals know all the information, and we do need to understand what our fellow people in our communities think about these issues as well, and why they think them, just as they hopefully would understand why you as an individual think the way that you do. Okay? So he quotes a psychologist named Dan Goleman that families are the first school of emotional learning. If so, then we're all better served by forgetting politics this Thanksgiving and focusing instead on the person across the table, listening authentically, loving them as best we can, and letting them love us. In the end, it's the common acceptance of truth that will set us free from acrimony. Determining the truth is hard, but we can create space for the necessary national dialogue by first starting small in our own homes, and I'll add in our schools and communities. Okay? So there is hope. There is hope. We have had serious divisions before. Of course, all of us kind of know this, but and I thank Mr. Rivers for doing some research and finding some examples that I could in turn share with you today. Excuse me. All right, so for Sunday, December 1st, 2019, this is the Pro and Con Show. I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Thanks for watching, and until the next show, bye for now.